and they belong in their family, but they want to belong elsewhere too. So that's what's happening. They're pulling apart from you, and it hurts, and it's hard because it's the first pull away, right? Sixth, seventh grade, it takes about 2 years, and you're like, oh my goodness. So it's about a 2-year process, but they pull away, and they're trying to figure out who they are. They still need you, they still love you, but they want to know who they are without you, and that's hard.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast audience. I'm your host, James McLamb, and I'm here with Nik Bowers. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm like so excited to be here.
I'm really excited too. I've been a follower of yours on social media now for at least a half a year, if not longer, and subscribe to your newsletter that I get. And I just admire the content that you put out. And it's really been timely, and we'll get into why it's spoken to me quite a bit this year. But Nik, our audience would love to hear about you from you. They get tired of me talking. They want to hear from you. So if you wouldn't mind, take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself to our audience.
All right. My name is Nik Bowers, and I am a former teacher, principal, and even taught at college level. But I specialize in middle school. So I help parents, tweens, and schools not just get through middle school, but thrive without losing their minds. And so I just love it. So just in the past year, I decided my dream was to educate parents and educate them, because when their kids get to middle school, you have to shift your parenting, and it doesn't happen often, and that's why a lot of parents and kids struggle. So yeah, I'm doing that. I started an Instagram just to see how it would go, and it kind of took off. And so I was like, all right, let's go. And so I do coaching, wrote a course, and now I have a membership, and I'm really, really excited about the way things are going. And yeah, so that's about it.
Why middle school? When I was in college and I was working at a camp, I was assigned the middle school grade my first year. And the director of the camp told me, he says, you're going to learn that there is a purgatory, and it's called working with middle schoolers. That place between heaven or hell that you wish somebody would get you out of. So I've always thought about that. I enjoyed my year. I did enjoy my year. I think it's because we had the same mentality. But why middle school? Why do you want to speak to them?
So it's interesting. I was actually an elementary teacher, and at public school. So I did elementary, fifth grade. I love fifth grade. Fifth graders were taller than I was, but that's okay. But I loved fifth grade because they had a sense of humor. Like, that's my sense of humor. But however, I took a quick break with my daughters when my daughters were born, and another public school, it was a former public school superintendent, two of them, asked me to join them on their leadership team because they were actually going to work at a private school. And they were like, we don't have bureaucracy. We can make this what we want it to be. So I started working there, and really just as a professional development and teaching, like reading, and doing it in middle school as well. And next thing you know, I was like, oh, they were losing people from fifth grade to sixth grade. It was like, so there's a private school, they needed retention. And I said, well, you guys have into sixth grade, and then you have seventh graders with 12th graders. There is this opportunity, and you're not capitalizing on it with kids. Let's create a middle school. And so we did. And it was phenomenal. I loved it. My team, we just handpicked everybody, and we created it how we thought it should go. And we failed forward, but yeah, it was awesome, and I loved it. And they taught me so much, and I changed the way I parented after being behind closed doors with parents and teachers, and or parents and kids, and it just completely changed my parenting. And so I had changed my parenting right before my kids got to middle school. But when my kids got to middle school, I was like, I thought I was ready, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not ready. It doesn't matter. Middle school is hard for everybody, and they're lying if they say it's not. So yeah. But anyway.
So why is the big issue in middle school? I've always felt that's that transition point. That's the part where their bodies are at one level, their minds are at another level, their emotional, is at another level. There's nothing in sync at all. So what's going on here? What's the issues with middle schoolers
It's
here?
so it's
Because
so
I know some parents are going like, "Hey, you're crazy. I'm freaking out here trying to
right,
raise my middle schooler." So,
right. And I love it. So like it because it is kind of chaotic. And so you have to find, as I talk about like raising beautiful messes. So you have to find the beauty in the mess. And I can do that in middle school. And I have not seen everyone's like, oh, my kid's a good kid, a good kid. And I'm like, oh, I haven't seen a bad middle school kid. Like they're just middle schoolers and they're just starting. So the reason why is because, well, puberty's starting earlier. Science is showing us that puberty's starting earlier. And so when it starts, we just automatically think of what we can see physically. But what's really happening is their emotions grow really fast, but their brain is truly changing from a concrete childhood brain, black and white,
mm-hmm.
Very simple, right? To this complex adult brain that's very abstract. So what happens is around 6th and 7th grade for girls, usually like 7th, 8th, 6th, 7th for boys, everything kind of like it's a renovation project. So if you think of it like a renovation project, you kind of as the parent you have to have an idea of like where you're going. So I'm always like, okay, like what do you want your 26-year-old child to be? Right? What do you want them to be able to do? Well, adolescence and puberty is the beginning of that. So like their brains actually truly get torn down. Like it prunes back things you're not using. It is crazy. And we know that with neuroscience, right? So I think parents are like, oh my gosh, I don't even know my kid. Well, you don't, but we're going to walk them over the bridge to high school. And if we do it well in middle school, when they get to high school, they have a lot of skills and habits in place if we do it intentionally. But most people just ignore it. They're like, oh, I don't, like I'm just going to deny and we're going to get through it. And then we'll start really working on this in 9th grade. So I don't see it that way. So I see middle school very different than everyone else. So let's do the hard stuff in middle school so they can practice in high school. And then when they're ready to go to college, they step in and they know who they are and what they're about. So
I don't know why this has really come up as a bigger issue in my house now than it did with the previous two. But our third child, that going through middle school, it was much more of a bigger deal. It was much more of she just finished the 8th grade. She's going into 9th. And these last 3 years have been much more drama than her older sister had. And I'd say that, and my wife says, well, the older one had drama too. And I'm like, not like this.
yeah.
So finding you during this past several months has been very timely because I've been able to see a lot more, because she's a lot more social than the older child is I'm being able to see her friends a lot more and see the entire chaos that they're encountering going on here. So I feel for the parents that are out there.
I see your face, and that is like most people's face. Like you'll have to go back and look at it, but your face is like right, like it's like, oh my goodness. And that's kind of how we enter it. But I like to make it fun. I think it can be really fun, and I really believe, as I've ushered people through, the parents that really pivot just a small amount, right? Teaching timeless values, but with more modern parenting. When they get to 8th grade, like they don't even recognize their child. They're like, they're more confident and whatnot. So when we do that, like I like to think of it like, if you're an athlete, offense or defense, right? So a lot of times if you're on the offense, then you're in more control, and a lot of parents want to be in control. So what does that look like in middle school? It looks different than elementary, and it definitely looks different than high school. So I prefer not being on the defense, right? Like I'd rather be on the offense. But yeah, anyway.
We got some parents that may be listening now. They have some, or watching hopefully, so they can see my face, that they see that their child is going through this period of time, and they're like, just give me some hope here. Tell me what's happening. What happened to that beautiful child that was so compliant and loving and could not wait to see mom and dad every day?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to that person? Is it the invasion of the body snatchers? Where are they at? So help them out. Give them some advice here, because I hear this all the time. I teach a parenting class at our church, and they want to say, this is not the same child that I had last year.
Yeah.
When did it happen? What happened to him?
Well, and that's the thing, right? And then we like to ask them, like, what are you thinking? And they're truly not even thinking. So, they grow like they're like puppies, right? They grow from the outside in. They grow like their feet and hands grow first. And then, but the brain is really going through some major, major changes. And then put them in, and I don't care if they're homeschool, private school, public school, it's hard. It doesn't matter where, because they don't know who they are. They don't understand what's going on. And it's scary. So think about that as like in the unknown, right? And then the parents don't really know what's going on. So you're operating, two of you, in the unknown, and it is chaotic. And so for me, I'd like to come in and go, okay, I have this down. It's science, but I have it down to a science. And I've done this with all kinds of different kids, right? We're talking like, not my ADHD. Oh yeah, my kids was their ADHD, but like, I found it with all kids. So there's a system that I take parents through to take them from like, emotional management. But then how do you bring the logic into it? Because their prefrontal cortex is not developed until 25, 26. We know that now. But just like if you start baseball, right? Like you start your second grader playing little league, I guess, or whatever. He's not going to be able to hit home runs out of a major league ballpark, but you're going to start. So with middle school, I always tell the parents, like, you are the prefrontal cortex. So you have to get them into this logic. This is your sweet spot, right? And this is where the magic happens. Most often, kids react and they're emotional, and the parents are like, I'm coming right up there with you, and nothing gets solved. Nothing gets solved. And the communication doesn't grow and the relationship doesn't grow. So when we can meet them and bring them here and teach them in the calm, not the chaos, the amazing things happen. So, and they learn because they're sponges.
I love that. Teach them in the calm and not the chaos. I had a guest on the podcast several years ago that described their brain during this portion of time as like they're in a high speed, very elite sports car that has a gas pedal that is extremely, extremely sensitive. You touch it, it'll go 0 to 10,000 miles an hour in a half a second.
Yeah.
And it has a brake that works, but you got to push it all the way to the ground, stay on it, and stay on it, and stay on it before it engages. And their purpose in sharing that is that it's not that they don't know they need to not do these things. It's that they don't have the ability to regulate it. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. And so when I do workshops and stuff, moms will go, well, I have to teach them how to manage their emotions, but I don't know how. And I'm like, bingo, right? We really don't. But I have good news. This is the best time to do it, is in middle school, because everything is chaotic. So let's all just like learn it all at the same time. And that's what I help parents do that with their tween together. They manage it, they bring it down, right? And then they go from there. So they go in the logic.
What's some of the advice we could give to a parent to give them some hope? Something just that they're listening. So when they get through listening to this, they're like, hey, I feel like I can do step one. I don't know what their other steps are, but at least I can do something today. Because I feel like that's just so many parents, they have no idea. All right. And I love what you said. I was reading your website again this week, and I love what you said about the fact that, parenting has to change because the world is changing. And so, there's 10 years difference between my girls. And that has a lot to do, with not only their personalities being different, but the era that they grew up in. The oldest is 24. She was on the front end of the social media, smartphone things. So it didn't affect her as much.
Right.
But the 14-year-old, we've had to be a lot more conscious on holding that stuff back. So I love that. So
yeah. So first of all, I want to go back to what you said, because you said it's different, and I think it's very different. And being actually, as a parent educator, when I taught in college, I taught middle school teachers how to teach. So I went in incognito in the back and saw middle schoolers. I call it like middle schoolers in the wild, because they didn't even know who I was. I just was back there observing. And so one thing I have seen is, I think, COVID happened. It happened, but a lot of these kids were in pivotal time to, where play was really important, just socializing and playing, and they were shut down for a year and they didn't get skills. And people were like, oh, well, it's fine. Well, I think we're starting to see the results of like that 1 year difference, right? Like that 1 year, we're expecting them to be this, and they're behind. They're behind socially. They're behind in the reading, and they live most of their life, honestly, consuming media and virtually. So we have to give them, like, we have to teach them in face to face, and we have to be really intentional with that. So you were saying, like, okay, let's give hope. All right, this is what I'm going to tell everyone, because this is like the really fast version, right? Of, like, if you're like, you have a chapter book and you skip to the end for the answers instead of really just, so one of the things, when I had kids cursing me out. I had parents cursing me out. Like, it just is, right? And you have to regulate yourself in that moment, because you can't let them see you sweat, right? You can't let them. So, so what I do is, the first thing is, I say to myself, it's called the Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. This is not really about you. It's about them, and they're taking it out on you. So this is like their problem, right? This is like, like, but I can't fix that. So I can only fix myself. So it's like, quit taking it personally. So I'll say to myself, like, quit taking it personally. This is not personal. I say that first. The second thing I do is, when kids are up here and parents are up here, I come in neutral, and I come in and I tell, like, some kids, like, I'm like a robot, right? And it sounds very robotic, but I take all the emotion out of everything. I kind of just, like, drop my emotion, and I almost, like, I just put like a shield up, and it helps me become more neutral. And so I come very robotic, and I bring I slow my words down, because as I slow my words down, they actually slow down. So I'll be like, okay, now let me just make sure I got this correct, right? And so when I'm speaking like that, when they're up here, guaranteed they just start coming down, right? And so they're not getting a reaction from me. They want one. Yeah, you want to fight? I'm not going to give it to you, but I'm going to help bring you down. And then, now let's talk about how we can solve this problem, right? Let's just talk how we can solve this problem. Not you, not like you just acted like, woo. How can we solve this problem? And it's magical. Oh, well, I wouldn't say magical, but it's better.
I've had for some parents that just the ability to bring them down.
Honestly, like, that is the biggest thing. And that's what we work on at first. Like, it's all about managing yourself, and then managing yourself with other people. So a lot of parents, when their kids, like, they become more disrespectful, their kids are like trying to find who they are, right? There's 3 questions they're answering. Am I normal? Who am I? And where do I belong? And they belong in their family, but they want to belong elsewhere too. So that's what's happening. They're pulling apart from you, and it hurts. And it's hard, because it's the first pull away, right? 6th, 7th grade, it takes about 2 years. And you're like, oh my goodness. So it's about a 2-year process. But they pull away, and they're trying to figure out who they are. They still need you. They still love you, but they want to know who they are without you. And that's hard.
I love that last statement. That's hashtag worthy. They want to know who they are without you. I love that. I love
And
it.
not like, yeah, but, and it hurts. So
our middle was a boy,
okay.
and I would say his was delayed quite a bit. His adventure into this thing probably was more 8th, 9th, and half a 10th than it was 6, 7, 8. Why does it happen so much earlier with girls, and what do we need to be prepared for? My wife has really gotten passionate about wanting to work with middle school girls as well.
Oh, good.
As a result, she coaches middle school cheerleading, so she sees this. She sees the drama they bring into a cheerleading, and she sits in her mind, just laughs, say, "This is nothing, but for them, it's the world. How do I help them manage this?"
Yeah.
So why is it so much? Why is it a problem with girls? Why are they having so much more problem earlier?
Okay, well, actually, boys start to develop later. That's just the way, like, that's just the way the science shows. We don't know why they're starting all to develop sooner. I think with girls, I think social media, I think TikTok, the whole Sephora thing. They want to figure out who they are. And so what do they see? They see influencers. They see, and you can say like, oh, my kid doesn't have a phone. Well, if my friend has a phone, I can still see it.
Yeah.
Right. I had students whose parents were like, oh, my kid doesn't have a phone. And I'm like, actually they do, because they have an old phone of so-and-so's that was given to them. And they're like, I'm like, oh yeah. So the influences are all around. What I think is important is with girls is that they're trying to grow up way too quick, and we kind of know that. But then how do we stop it? How do we expect them, right, to slow them down? And I think not giving them a phone is one way, but also engaging them with a variety of other things. I think one thing that I love doing, we were in a K-12 school, and we had a theme every year. And the first, or not the, like, I think it was the third or fourth year, it was called Be the Blessing. And then as the teachers, we were like, don't be the curse. But
Wow.
I mean, like, because there were some people that were really negative, right? And so, and some of those could be curses. But anyway, so our fifth graders were blessing buddies with the younger kids. So they mentored. They were at the peak of their development, and they mentored the little guys. My 12th graders mentored my sixth graders, right? My juniors mentored my seventh graders. And so what happened is that the 12th graders poured into those sixth graders that really needed it. They had people to look up to. And so it was just, and so we did face to face, like, like it was once a month. And one time the sixth graders would plan for the seniors, then the seniors would plan for the sixth graders. It was just, and it built a community, but it also just shows like the development. And here again, life on life mentoring is huge. So
That just got me whole thinking about that whole process, about how that could work. Because my daughter's in a K-12 private school. And I was just thinking, man, that would be so effective. We got to
it
talk
is.
about how that implemented. Because I like that idea. Now I've got me thinking in a whole different direction here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went off. I went off. Wow, that's good.
And I think
That's
they
good.
actually still do that today. So I'm not even there, and they still do that because it's just it was a critical piece, a critical piece.
Well, what were some of the outcomes that you saw as these seniors were pouring into them?
So the thing that I saw, and actually I just found a whole bunch of like all my notes. So I'm going to start digging through those. I finally like found them after like a big move, but I had some sixth graders that here again really struggling with their body image, right? They're just a lot of times their anger is from that they're just uncomfortable. Think about it. Like you have a tag on you or something that's itchy or a bug bite that bothers you. You're not in the best mood, right? You just kind of like annoyed. Their whole bodies feel like that some days. And they don't have the communication to tell us. They don't want to say to them, I feel so awkward in my body, Mom. They're not going to say that. They're going to be like, leave me alone, right? I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. Those kinds of things. So you have to kind of listen to learn, and like you have to go underneath what's really going on to see what is really happening. But so anyway, so I had some sixth graders, and just watching them go through that, right? They looked forward, and they looked forward to that time together, and then the confidence that came with having a senior really like be your buddy, right? And you would see them like at games and stuff, like there was just this connection. So even when you felt like you didn't belong, there was one person in the school that connected with you. That's pretty powerful. So when you're struggling, who am I? Am I normal? Where do I belong? Just one connection can grow your confidence. So those eighth graders, by the time they got to eighth grade, they were leaders. And I think it was because of the way we structured a lot of the different things that they did.
When you talked about that tag analogy, it made me immediately think of some of the issues that my daughter encountered and saw that happening. And a lot of it was girls, bullying other girls during that time period. And my thought immediately went to, was it the bulliers, the people who were being bullies? Did they have a tag that was itching them? And their only
Absolutely.
way of reacting to that was to find someone they could throw their discomfort on.
Right. Absolutely. Like, so I think that, and I say this a lot to kids. Like, I think, we always say like hurting people hurt people. But I think, emotions aren't right or wrong. They just are. But you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt others with that. So that's why that emotional management is huge. That's like the expectation. Like in our school, it was like, hey, you can have your feelings, but you don't hurt others with them and you don't hurt yourself. Let's learn how to cope. Let's learn how to manage them and then get into that zone of logic, right? So that was number one. But so Mean Girls, are Mean Girls mean?
Yeah,
Or
that was the blog that got me excited a few weeks ago,
yeah,
a month ago.
so are Mean Girls really mean? And I think like we should grow them out of it. They don't know how to manage their emotions, right? They don't know how to communicate what's happening, and they don't have the language because again, their brains are in kind. So like we have to teach them the language to use. We have to model it because their brains, like the part that communicates, it's growing, it's changing, so it's not working the best. So we have to put that in while the renovation is starting, right? So think about it. Like if your brain's going through a renovation or you're going and doing a renovation, you're not going to put old stuff in. You're actually going to put really good stuff in, like the cutting edge stuff that you know. So when my kids were in middle school, we worked on processes. How do you study? I didn't care about grades. How do you study? Do you know how to study? Do you know how to learn? Okay. Do you know how to manage yourself? Can you let's work on reading a room. Reading a room is really important. So all of these things I focused on in middle school. And then when my girls got to high school, they just practice, right? So the mean girl, I think, can be grown out. I've seen the mean girl be mean, sixth, seventh grade, hormones, everything's crazy, divorce at home, like all this stuff at home. But by the time she gets to eighth grade, it settles down because you held them accountable and you taught them. You held them accountable and you taught them. And I think that's what's missing, right? Like we're afraid to hold them accountable, and then we don't know really how to teach them sometimes because they scare us.
Wow. And that's from a parent perspective. I was thinking also these particular mean girls that my daughter had encountered and stuff. Their parents don't even acknowledge that there's a
Right.
problem. They think their daughters are
Oh,
perfect. They're
absolutely.
angels and stuff. And yet the school is like, we're not even sure we're gonna let you come back in the ninth grade because, oh yes you're pretty, oh yes you're smart, oh yes you're popular, but you're also the catalyst for a lot of problems here.
Yeah. I actually you have to call the mean girl out and her parents. Right. You have to be really brave. We have to be brave. And we have to model being brave. And like we have to help our kids find their voice. And I just did a thing on that. I think I did a reel about like voice lessons, right? So when they start finding their voice as young adults, it's just like when they start an instrument. They're not really good at it. They're not good at communicating. And so we have to help them grow. And now think about that. It comes out disrespectful. It comes out like, because they don't really know how. And they might have known as like young kids, but they have new brains now. So now you have to reteach all of it. And you have to reteach it in the context of their life. So it's messy. It's hard, but when you do that, it like their voice, you can teach them how to be respectful, how to come to you and be like, my kids call me out on stuff, but they don't do it in a mean way. They'll just be
Right.
like, Mom, you need to stop. And I'm like, that's fair because we've learned how to speak in such a way that is respectful. So their
Wow.
voice, we need to give them practice.
This is good for me. This is better for. I hope the audience is enjoying this as much as I am because uh, it's giving me a lot of ideas about, because we've been through this
Yeah.
and we've seen this, and yet my wife is still working with these young ladies and will be for a couple of more years probably, and wants to pour into them. How can we set them up to be the best version of themselves as they go forward,
Yeah.
so that they can find it? Because you talked about the three questions you had. That's so amazing that you said that. We did a survey where we interviewed over 2,500 youth, asked them what their biggest problem was, and we discovered the biggest areas were self-image, who am I, relationships, where do I belong, and then finding their purpose and ability to set goals for their purpose, or why am I here. And
Right.
those three questions of who am I, where do I belong, and why am I here, the Fuller Institute, Youth Institute out of California, did a survey after as well and came up with those three questions. So they all align. All three, you, us, them, all of them align. This is what they're struggling with. And
Yeah.
I often think that those three questions in that order is what they have to have addressed. They got to
Yeah.
first realize, who am I? Before they can start going into, okay, then where's my people? Where do I
Yes.
belong?
Right.
And then, I mean, they're all related. They're all like three circles that overlap. But before they even find what their purpose is and how to reach that purpose, they don't have those other two. They're going to struggle with it all. So I really love that as well. I was like,
You
oh,
know
this
what's
is great. That's
interesting
why I
is
was smiling so big.
no, 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 no. So in my course and in my membership, the first thing parents do is they do a 30-minute conversation with their kids. And this is different though, because, even in, whether you're religious or not, everyone has values. And so what happens though, especially in religion, we're like, these are your values. This is what you believe. And one of the things, they start going, well, I don't know if I believe that. And we get really, really nervous. You have to believe what we believe. So this is how I kind of approach it. And it is really, it works. So, therapists do this all the time with individuals, but if you do it as a family. So I have a lesson that I just am like, values are like truly like it's the filter of like who we want to become. And the world is telling our girls and our boys of like what they should look like and how they should do this. But I'm talking true character. I'm talking like, who do you want to be? So when you look at the values, you're looking at respect, responsibility, curiosity, creativity, right? Kindness, like there's not a bad value. And so in this little lesson, everyone in your family decides what their top 5 values are. And they're all gonna be great. But then that's their values. That's their anchor and their compass. So therefore, I would say to my girls, like, is this who you want to be right now? Right? Is this who you want to be? Because remember, like your values were this, and they're not aligned, which is we're not about perfection. We're about like getting better, right? We're about practice to be better, not perfection. But let's rewind and see like how we could get to where we want to be, right? And I didn't lecture at all. I just said, where do you want to be? Remember, you said that you wanted to be respectful. So why don't you give that a try again? Right. So work ethic, those kinds of things. So then also, as a parent, if I know that that's like what my kid wants to be, then every decision I'm going to make is going to help guide them to become that. And it just works. So it's their compass and their anchor, right? Like, this is who you want to be. And then what happens a lot of times in middle school, because they're new at their new brains, right, is they get far away from our values. And when we are far away from our values of who we really want to be, that's when we don't fit, and we have to recognize it. That's when we have to like reset ourselves. That's when we have to look at our relationships, because we're not going to change our values to fit in, right? We're not gonna change our values to belong. So like that is why like I'm always like, you have to do the values. Like before you work with me, you have to do the values. And so that as a family. So everyone does it. And then as a family, you're like, our values are this. And in our house, it was work ethic, respect, and honesty. Own it. And then we'll be able to deal with it. And my girls will tell you, that. Yep, work ethic, respect, and honesty.
So you've mentioned several times about working with you in an online class, and I know some of the audience has got to be going, I want to know more about what this is. Tell them a little bit about what services and what this online class that you have offers, in case they're interested.
Okay, so I have to tell you that I'm a big introvert. And it's hard to tell. Like even to get on camera, way back in the like last year, it was so hard. I almost had an anxiety attack every time I did it, but I'm getting better at that now. However, so I first started out with I'm just going to make a course, and it did well. Except people were like, "We want to work with you," and I was like, "Okay, like then I'll start coaching." But it's a time factor. So I am launching. I started a So I do one-on-one coaching. I have a course that you can buy off my website, but also I have a membership that I'm starting because I think being a mom or dad is really lonely in middle school. You can't talk about some of the things that are going on with your child. And when they change friends and lose friends, you lose friends too. So I started a founding member back in April, and we've been doing it's a mom tween membership. And so I have coaching for moms on one Wednesday, and then I have coaching for girls like 4th through 6th grade and 7th through 9th grade on the other Wednesdays. And then we have mom tween workshops. Now I'm going to open it up to like parents of like any tween, but I just wanted to see like if this would take off. Like I'm just trying to do that. So it starts July 15th. Getting ready for the school year. So if you're a new, either like I say phase 1 going into middle school, you're in the thick of middle school, or even getting ready for high school, we have all kinds of stuff for you. So it's exciting. So it's just
and how can they connect with you to find out more about this? Where can they find you at?
So my website's there, nikbowers.com. And my email is info@nikbowers.com. Just reach out, and you can always you can book a one-on-one with me, a power chat, a half an hour power chat, and we can decide what you need and what you want. But right now, the membership won't open until July 15th, but just keep an eye out on that. I'm really excited.
They can find you on Instagram, any other places?
Instagram at Nik Bowers with the underscore, on TikTok and on YouTube. So I am starting I've had a YouTube like I've been playing around with, but that's my new goal, is just to put some like easy lessons, 3 to 5 minutes. So moms will go, oh, okay, I can do that. And then go and try it.
And if you're interested in finding out that information, that contact information, audience, if you're listening, just go to your app. It'll be in the show notes. If you're watching, you know the drill on YouTube. You just look straight down and hit more information, and there it'll be right there for you to be able to connect with you. Nik, you're really doing great work on this. God's work in this stuff, and in an area of purgatory, that place between heaven and hell. That I don't know many people that intentionally that want to dive into that as with the passion and the veracity that you're showing on this. So thank you for that. That really excites me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Thank you
for giving the content and it being what I needed when I needed it. The Mean Girls stuff just came right at the point where we were just dealing with that, and then that pops up, and I'm like, I got to reach out again. This is amazing, because this is exactly what I need to be seeing and reading right now. So it's great timing all the way around.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and anytime. I love having conversations with you. We get to the heart of things. So.
And audience, thank you for sticking with us. Look, if you stayed with us for almost 40 minutes, you found some value in what we're talking about. And so like and comment on this, but most important than that is share it, because someone that you know has not heard this yet, and they need to hear this message, and they need to connect with this so that they can find some hope in this year's and find get some tools in their bag to be able to set their child up to thrive as they get older. So like, share, and comment on this episode. Thank you, Nik, for joining us. Thank you, audience, for being with us. And we'll see you again very soon on another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast.